This scary camping discovery was never supposed to be seen by human eyes. When you go camping, you want to get away from it all. The sounds of the city, the annoyances of daily life, and most importantly, other people. If you've ever gone camping, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There is nothing quite like being out in nature. All you have to do is relax, enjoy the beautiful surroundings, and try not to get eaten by bears. But for one group of campers, their getaway would quickly turn into a nightmare. When they heard voices coming from the forest, what they heard next made them pack up and leave immediately. Today we will look at the story of the campers who found something they should never have. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out. And of course, stay until the end if you want to see more videos like this one. Alright, let's get started. These campers had no idea they were being stalked. Two guys and a girl went camping together, looking for some adventure. They set up their camp and got ready for a weekend full of fun. After settling in, they decided to go on a little walk. While they were walking, they looked for a nice spot where they could fish. The three friends were having a great time together. None of them had ever been on a trip like this before, so everything was exciting to them. As they continued to walk, they came across a clearing and decided to check it out. In the middle of the clearing was a lake. It was very beautiful and peaceful, which was perfect for the three friends. They sat down on the grass and watched the fish jump around. The water was so clear that they could even see some of the plants growing underwater. The friends knew right away this was the perfect place to spend an afternoon. They unpacked their fishing gear and baited their hooks. Then they waited patiently for a bite. While they were waiting, they talked about all sorts of things. They discussed their favorite movies, their dream cars, and their plans for the future. For a while, they forgot about everything else in the world. They were just three friends enjoying a beautiful day together. Suddenly, the line went taut. One of the friends had a fish on the line. He reeled it in and soon had a large trout in his hands. The other two friends cheered him on, and he smiled proudly. This was going to be a good meal, but then they heard a sound that made them freeze. The sound was coming from the trees, and it didn't sound like anything they had ever heard before. At first, they couldn't quite make out what it was, but as it got closer, they realized it was a voice. Someone or something was calling their names. The voice was getting louder and louder, and the campers could feel their hearts racing. They didn't know what to do. They wanted to run, but they were frozen in place. The voice stopped suddenly, and the campers looked around nervously. They didn't see anyone, but they could feel eyes watching them from the trees. The campers packed up their things and ran as fast as they could to their car. They didn't stop running until they were inside the car with the doors locked. They didn't want to look back. They were too afraid of what they might see. They drove away as fast as they could, and they didn't slow down until they were far away from the clearing. The campers never went back to that spot, and they never told anyone what they had seen or heard. They were afraid that no one would believe them, and they didn't want to be laughed at, but the memory of that day stayed with them forever. What do you think? Was it a hiker or something more sinister? Let me know in the comments below. Campers hear strange noises in the middle of the night. A couple of campers decided to spend the night in their tent. They thought it would be a fun experience and a great way to bond with nature. However, they were in for a big surprise. As soon as it got dark, they heard all sorts of strange noises coming from outside the tent. They could hear what sounded like footsteps, voices, and even screams. The campers were scared, but they tried to make the best of it. They huddled together for warmth and comfort, and they told each other stories to take their minds off the scary noises. They also made sure to keep their tent flap closed tight, so that whatever was out there couldn't get in. As the night wore on, the noises outside the tent became louder and more frequent. The campers could feel their anxiety rising, and they began to wonder if they should have stayed in a hotel instead. But they were determined to stick it out. And just as the sun began to rise, the noises outside the tent slowly came to a halt. The campers were relieved, and they unzipped the tent flap to see what had been making all the commotion. To their surprise, they found nothing. There were no footprints in the ground, and there was no sign of any animals. The campers were left scratching their heads in confusion, and they could only wonder what had been making all those scary noises. Then they saw something in the grass that made their blood run cold. The campers were still shaken from the night's events, but they were also curious. They decided to explore the area and see if they could find anything that could explain what they had heard. As they walked around the tent, they noticed something strange in the grass. At first, they thought it was just a bush, but as they got closer, they realized it was something else entirely. It was a pile of leaves that had been carefully arranged in a circle. The campers were puzzled, and they couldn't figure out why someone or something would make such a strange pattern. They looked around, but there was no one in sight. Who would have done this, and why? The campers were starting to feel uneasy, and they decided to move on. But as they walked away, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They quickened their pace, and soon they were running as fast as they could away from the campsite. They never looked back, and they never went back to that clearing. They were too afraid of what they might find there, but the memory of that day stayed with them forever. They often wondered if what they had seen was real or just a figment of their imagination, but they'll never know for sure. Strange campsite discovery. A group of friends decided to go camping in the woods. They thought it would be a fun and relaxing weekend away from the hustle and bustle of city life. They packed up their car and headed into the forest. Once they arrived, they set up their tent and started a fire. They roasted marshmallows and told stories, and they enjoyed the peace and quiet of the woods. The next morning, one of the campers woke up early and decided to go for a walk. As he was walking, he noticed something strange in the trees ahead of him. He couldn't quite make out what it was, but it looked like a face peering at him from behind the bark. He stopped and stared at the tree, and that's when he noticed something even stranger. The face was carved into the tree. It wasn't a natural formation. Someone or something had taken the time to carve out the eyes, nose, and mouth of what looked like a grotesque creature. The camper froze in his tracks. He didn't know what to do. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like they were filled with lead. He took a few steps back and then broke into a sprint. He didn't stop running until he was back at the tent, where his friends were still sleeping. They never found out who was responsible for the creepy carving, and they never went back to that part of the woods. But the memory of that day stayed with them forever. Which story did you like the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you are subscribed. See you next time.